Me coming your way right here, right now. This officially go down as episode number 185. deGrom goes down. Jacob deGrom, after just 6 starts in his first year of the large contract with the Texas Rangers, gone down, tearing UCL. He is headed for Tommy John. We are headed here. As always, you can be headed to jump on board the Unfiltered Revolution. It is simple. Get on board on Twitter at Casey Stern, Apple, Spotify, everywhere you get your podcasts. You also can join me on the YouTube channel and search Unfiltered with Casey Stern as well and get all the guests, the interviews, and all sorts of things through the first 184 episodes plus. I want to get into the deGrom situation here and just kind of give my comments. So be probably kind of brief, but I wanted to at least put something out on it. You, of course, can jump in the comments and let me know your thoughts, whether you're a Met fan, a Ranger fan, a baseball fan. Obviously, a lot of emotions. People get very emotional when it comes down to contracts and somebody who left, somebody who they thought deserted them, somebody who they thought spurned them, somebody who wasn't loyal, or somebody who got too much money spent on them or not enough, vice versa, whatever the case is. And hindsight 2020, perception reality, we always think, though, after the deal and get into a situation of, well, now based on what happened, will determine exactly whether or not the decisions that were made were correct. Now those decisions will seemingly be correct for the Mets, not so for the Rangers. Still a long deal. Obviously, nobody knew what this was going to happen, but that is where we're going to be for now. I want to get into some of those comments. But as always, let's get this out of the way because it is important. We, as always, presented by our good friends at BetOnline. BetOnline, your number one source for all your championship finals info, stats, news, and scores. Get the latest odds and lines on the latest matchup reports for this year's NBA and Stanley Cup Final. BetOnline, your sports intel headquarters this season. They've got you covered. All the insider sports wagering needs, basketball, hockey, MLB, UFC, boxing. It's the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info, including all the live betting options and your favorite casino and card games, all available right now to play right from your home. So get into the action today. Head over to the website, use your mobile device to join, and be sure to use your promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, to get your 50% bonus on your first deposit. It's BetOnline where the game starts, and we get started here. And my voice is still a little wonky, so please forgive me for being a little scratchy and having some water along the way, but I wanted to jump in on this, so here we go. If you are sitting there, a rational human being who is a baseball fan, whether you're a Met fan, and you all know that I am, whether you're being unbiased, as I'm trying to, whether you're a Ranger fan, have the bias that way, or anywhere in between. If you are at first shot anything but gutted for Jacob deGrom and for the game, even if you're not for the Texas Rangers, which their fans will be, but maybe others will not, because they spent the money. They knew what they were doing. We all knew that Jake obviously was going to have issues staying healthy, albeit we didn't know 6 starts in, albeit we didn't know Tommy John, seemingly inflammation of one thing or another always with Jake, and it's always been a process of trying to, if you will, keep him in bubble wrap so he can stay on the mound. But how are you not gutted for this dude? You could say a lot of things about Jacob deGrom. And a lot are said, it's like I've always said when we argue about the Hall of Fame, for example, in general. Over the last 2 decades I'm doing this, I've always said the same thing. This is where we then get into almost like some kind of an arbitration hearing with individuals where if you don't think they belong in the Hall of Fame, you then have to go overboard and almost tell you all the things that are wrong with them, like a team would do to a player in an arbitration hearing trying to save money. So if you don't think Don Mattingly, I'm just throwing out names. If you don't think Don Mattingly, you don't think Dale Murphy, you don't think Keith Hernandez, or you don't think whomever the guy may be for you doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame, then it's got to be all these things. And sometimes it's thrown on us because, albeit Harold Baines does not belong, should not be in the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, but Harold Baines, terrific player, asset to teams, dude in the clubhouse, representative of the game, all those things. But you got to then kind of crap on him when it comes in through the committee, LaRussa and company, the way that it did. Well, that is the way we look at Jacob deGrom's career, because things are said like I have said, and I've heard it. So let me tell you and go back to something I have said over the years. Jacob deGrom is not in totality the best pitcher I've ever seen. But Jacob deGrom at his height was as dominant as any pitcher I've ever seen, except for my lifetime, my own eyes, and I happen to be in that city watching it in college at the time. Pedro Martinez in back-to-back years in 99 and 2000, which in my opinion, just my own take, are the best back-to-back seasons ever pitched in this great sport. That includes 1984, Dwight Gooden, and all the different things that you want to talk about that have been in at least my lifetime, mid-40s. And then you go back and you think about Bob Gibson at the height and Sandy Koufax, and then people argue, well, how could you say that about this dude because he's never on the mound? And I'm not saying again in totality, but I am telling you the repertoire, the things he was able to do, the dominance he was putting forth, it is very rarefied air. Even Clayton Kershaw, who to me is a gem beyond gems, as a human, as a pitcher, and a first ballot Hall of Famer, and maybe has a better set, if you will, right, of numbers and all the and all of those things, and consistency, whatever you want to put in there, and has some height of the height too. I don't know, even when he was first starting to use and dominate with that slider, in addition to the curve and everything else he was doing, that I was ever sitting there saying, the way with my mouth dropped, I was saying, watching Jacob deGrom, that I'd never seen anything like this before San Pedro late 90s. Does that mean Jacob deGrom's a better pitcher than Greg Maddux? No, doesn't mean that, but that's what you'll hear. Or from Randy Johnson fans, and then it becomes, again, that arbitration hearing that I'm wrong. Now, you'll have people say Jacob deGrom for the 10 years he's put up, and you could go look against the Gibsons, the Koufaxes, and this run that he's had, that it's enough for the Hall of Fame. And other people are going to sit there and they're going to look at the totality of numbers and tell you he's nowhere even close, and you're a moron if you're thinking that. And that's part of the great game of baseball, is that unlike other sports, which is why these numbers are so paramount, it is such an exploitation of our love for the sport that we get so invested with the opinionating, the opining, and the digging in and the dissecting of numbers to say this guy is there and that guy belongs there and this guy's in this category, that guy's in that tier, he's not on his level, he's not in his league, so on and so forth. But one thing that has never been said about Jacob deGrom, and if it has, you'd be wrong, and I covered him. No one should have ever said that Jake was not, forget about just an unbelievable pitcher when he's healthy. I think we know that. Whatever you want to do to kind of, put it in a sectional what that means for you. But this guy is an ultimate competitor. You saw it even at the end of last season, last performance with the Mets, when after Scherzer stuck up the joint and after Bassett stuck up the joint, here's deGrom basically sitting there, not even throwing heaters, not having his best stuff and struggling, but getting through to find a way to win you a game to get you to the next day. Jacob deGrom did not tell the Mets over those years, I don't want to pitch, I don't want to be here. One of the things, in fact, he was always frustrated with was how much they held him back. Now, clearly, we understand why, and I'm not trying to say that this isn't another example of his arm not being where it needs to be, or that things were going to break down, and if it's not the shoulder or the elbow or the side or the oblique, it's going to be something else. Forearm, right, everything. Because everything not in the right, and I hope, God bless, that he gets this injury, his surgery, the Tommy John, he comes back, and he's able, even if he's not at that level, Jacob deGrom, be some level that he's content with and can compete with, because his compete level will get him to levels others can't. It'll get him higher than whatever that ability is going to be, and then he can be there for years to come to finish out this contract, and God bless, I hope that for him. Now, did I think that Jacob deGrom was a guy who the Mets should have given a large deal, the likes of what he got in Texas? No. I said that at the time, they could not really do that. They were even hesitating, and certainly you should, whether or not at Verlander, and I understand his age, but at his shortened years, if even that was too much, because you're already dealing with watching the decline of just the age of Scherzer, and that is nature, time undefeated. I'm not saying the Mets should have done it. But today is not about the Mets dodged some bullet Today isn't about the Rangers made some mistake, because just like the Mets had to give Max Scherzer $130 million for him to be there, just like that was the only way he was ever going to come to the Mets. He's seen the Mets. He could have been back in LA, go wherever he wants. You had to, if you're the Rangers, even with Bruce Bochy, even with CY with Chris Young, you had to go out and give all of this to get deGrom in. You had to do it. Now, in hindsight, we're all going to look at it and say, well, this is proof that it was a big mistake. But today is not the day for that mistake or the ones the Mets didn't make. Today is not for Jacob deGrom, an overstating of who he was, and he never stayed on the mound enough to be paid like the best pitcher. This is not that day. This is the day this is sad for this kid and this competitor and this dude who wants so badly to show you everything he's got. And this is sad for the game. It's sad for every fan who watches him. My son's only 9 years old. There are not many pitchers in the league he would care about, but there's only a handful, Verlander and Scherzer probably being two others because of the careers they've had, that I would sit down and want him to watch and explain just the magnificence that has been Jacob deGrom, whether he was in a Met uniform doing it or a Ranger uniform and doing it. The numbers that this guy has put up are ungodly. If he had done it in a more consistent manner, they'd be considered even that much more than so. But regardless, today is about being gutted for him. Today is about being gutted for the game and the loss of not getting to see him pitch. It's not always about who made the mistake or dodged the bullet. And look, I didn't think Jacob deGrom did everything right. I mentioned that. You can go in episodes past, when he left, how the season ended, things that were said, things that weren't. But I said at the time that I had no ill feelings and no Met fan should. Nobody should. First of all, a guy can do whatever he wants. I don't care if it's going way back when machine NBA. Kevin Durant wants to go to Golden State, and I was covering that, and I didn't get that either. Because, sorry, for even money, I'm living in back by the Bay and not in Oklahoma City to go play with Steph Curry. That's an added bonus. Sorry. But regardless, this is deGrom's choice. Could have done whatever he wanted. I never had a problem with that. Even though everything not perfect. Never going to be. Things said, whatever it might be, right? But any Met fan who's got ill will towards deGrom or who laughs because of some kind of you dodged a bullet, you're a moron. Because guess what? If you live the life I've lived in my mid-40s, there are not many Met players, okay? Very few, who have given you the moments that dude gave you in that jersey in your stadium with you rooting for him. There aren't many who did that. And in my lifetime, not many names. Dwight Gooden in the mid-'80s, and Straw when he came up, and Mike Piazza when he came in, and David Wright during his career, and maybe one or two others. Again, not to the late Tom Seaver or others before my time. But if you're my age, or certainly if you're younger, he in a short list. And if you don't get that, you're an idiot. So I'm gutted for Jake. I feel terrible, obviously, for Boch and for that organization because of the importance of what he is and how great a year they're having and how much more immensely so it could have been if he came back this year. I hope Jake comes back healthy from the surgery and is able to give you some semblance of giving you that compete level and that Jacob deGrom nature the rest of the way in his career and in this contract. But today ain't about money. Today ain't about mistakes and dodging bullets. Today is about, no matter what age you are, one of the most dominant pitchers I don't care who you are, have ever seen, and I have ever seen going down. And not being around to get to watch him every 5 days. All the best to Jake and success in his comeback. And that's what today, at least for a moment, should be about. All your moments can be spent here, unfiltered, where I like to be. Episode 185 in the books. We, as always, presented